An explosion tore through downtown Oklahoma City, a blast so violent it carved a scar into the heart of America. Smoke flooded the sky, sirens screamed across shattered streets, and the nation watched in disbelief as chaos unfolded. Years later, on June 11, 2001 at 7:14 a.m., the man responsible for that horror took his final breath. But this story isn't about the moment he died. It's about the final 24 hours of the man who changed American history in a single violent morning. Timothy McVeigh was never the kind of death row inmate who clung to life. While others fought endlessly through appeals and legal delays, McVeigh did the opposite. He shut down every attempt to save him. He dismissed his own lawyers, refused to challenge the verdict, and even accelerated his execution. In his mind, death wasn't punishment. It was a mission completed. 6 years before he walked into the execution chamber, this former Gulf War soldier loaded a rented truck with a homemade bomb and drove it straight to the Alfred P. Murrah Federal Building. At 9:02 a.m., he detonated it, killing 168 people. 19 were small children sitting inside a daycare. Minutes into their morning routine and his final hours, McVeigh appeared disturbingly calm. No fear, no panic, just a cold, deliberate acceptance. What went through the mind of a man the nation came to fear? What did he choose for his last meal? What were his final words? And did he ever feel remorse for the children whose lives he erased? Before we begin, make sure to like, share, and subscribe. This is the Court of Secrets. Stay with us. For 5 days, Timothy McVeigh lived in a small 8 by 12-foot concrete cell. Since June 6th, this holding space had been his entire world. Inside, there was nothing but a bed, a sink, and a toilet. The walls were gray and unyielding, the air heavy with stillness. Guards monitored him constantly through security cameras, watching every move, every gesture. No privacy, no phone calls, no visitors, except his lawyers and a priest who came to offer guidance in his final hours. Most condemned prisoners break under the strain of isolation in the days before execution. They cry, scream, or beg for mercy. McVeigh was different. The guards watched in awe and, at times, unease. He carried himself like a soldier preparing for a mission, not a man about to die. Every morning, he made his bed with precision, folding each corner with care, straightening the sheets as if preparing for inspection. He exercised methodically, doing push-ups and sit-ups in the limited space of his cell, his movements disciplined, almost ritualistic. He read books and wrote letters with meticulous handwriting, every word deliberate, every line perfectly straight. When his meals arrived, he thanked the guards politely, a simple act that emphasized his control over even the smallest interactions. Unlike most inmates on death row who fight every legal avenue, McVeigh had dismissed his attorneys who tried to save his life, insisting he would not delay his execution. He had planned every detail of his final hours, down to the clothes he would wear, the words he would speak, and the food he would eat. The warden later described him as the calmest condemned man he had ever seen. It was unsettling, witnessing someone capable of killing 168 people exhibit more composure than those who had sworn to uphold the law. To understand McVeigh's eerie calmness, we must trace back 6 years to April 19, 1995. That morning began like any other in Oklahoma City. Parents dropped children at the daycare on the second floor of the Alfred P. Murrah Federal Building. Workers grabbed coffee and settled into their morning routines, unaware that a catastrophe was imminent. At 9:02 a.m., everything changed. McVeigh, a Gulf War veteran, had packed a yellow Ryder truck with 5,000 pounds of explosives. Fertilizer and racing fuel formed a volatile mixture, purchased legally and prepared meticulously. He parked the truck outside the building and walked away. Within 2 minutes, the explosion tore through the north side of the structure, collapsing concrete slabs and killing anyone inside instantly. The blast was felt for miles. 168 people lost their lives, including 19 children in the daycare center. Another 684 suffered injuries ranging from minor to catastrophic, some losing limbs or permanent mobility. Arguments emerged over whether McVeigh had knowledge of the children. He claimed ignorance, though his partner Terry Nichols later admitted they knew and did not care. McVeigh referred to the children as collateral damage, a term that chilled many who heard it. Yet McVeigh viewed himself as a soldier, a man acting against a government he believed had become tyrannical. His path to this moment began long before the Oklahoma City bombing. Childhood bullying, feelings of alienation, and a growing obsession with government conspiracies laid the foundation for his radicalization. His experiences in the Gulf War sharpened a sense of betrayal and injustice, while incidents like the Waco siege deepened his distrust and fueled his resolve. By June 10, 2001, McVeigh faced his final day. Guards delivered breakfast at 7:30 a.m. Scrambled eggs, oatmeal, toast, fruit, and milk, the same fare as every other prisoner received. McVeigh ate deliberately, slowly, and with care, finishing every bite and thanking the guard who collected his tray. At 8:30 a.m., he took his final shower as a free man, methodically washing as if preparing for a significant event, combing his hair neatly afterward, returning to his cell with calm purpose. Inside, he spent hours with his chosen books: a dictionary, the Declaration of Independence, and Marcus Aurelius' Meditations. Each held meaning. The dictionary reflected his appreciation for precision. The Declaration of Independence symbolized his interpretation of patriotism, and Meditations provided guidance on accepting fate with dignity. Guards observed quietly as he read, taking notes and underlining passages, a student preparing for an examination, not a man awaiting execution. The warden checked on him personally. McVeigh sat calmly on his bed, and when asked how he felt, he replied simply, "Ready." At 10 a.m., his lawyers arrived, hopeful for last-minute reconsideration. McVeigh, however, remained unwavering. He refused any additional appeals. "No," he said firmly, "I'm done with this." His attorneys, accustomed to clients fighting tooth and nail for life, could not comprehend his resolve. McVeigh considered his execution the final act in his ongoing battle against a government he viewed as oppressive. He thanked his lawyers for their efforts, knowing they would never see him alive again. In the afternoon, McVeigh wrote letters to his hometown newspaper and to family and friends, explaining, justifying, and rationalizing his actions. He exhibited no remorse for the deaths of the children or the countless other victims. To him, these were casualties of war, unavoidable consequences of a mission he believed necessary. He compared himself to fighter pilots from World War II, claiming they were hailed as heroes despite similar acts of destruction, while he was branded a terrorist. McVeigh's reasoning was chilling in its clarity. He saw no moral difference between himself and soldiers in combat, maintaining the belief that he acted out of patriotism rather than malice. At 2 p.m., Father Charles Smith arrived to provide spiritual counsel. Though McVeigh identified as agnostic, he accepted the priest's presence, seeking guidance, if not absolution. They discussed life, death, and forgiveness, and recited the Lord's Prayer together, the same prayer McVeigh had learned in childhood. When asked if he wished to offer any final words to the victims' families, McVeigh shook his head. He had none. Outside the prison, crowds began gathering, reporters lined the streets, some anticipating justice, others protesting the death penalty. As evening approached, McVeigh requested his final meal: 2 pints of mint chocolate chip ice cream. Simple, unassuming, yet deliberate. He ate slowly, savoring every bite, expressing satisfaction with a calm, almost mundane remark, "That was good." Offered sedatives to ease the nerves of the condemned, McVeigh declined, choosing instead to confront death fully aware, lucid, and composed. That night, he wrote letters of thanks and explanations to loved ones, handwriting neat, precise, and controlled. At 10 p.m., lights dimmed, and McVeigh slept, untroubled by fear, dreams, or unease. Guards were astonished by his tranquility. As dawn approached, the prison prepared for the final act. Every protocol was reviewed, every step rehearsed. Timothy McVeigh would become the first federal execution in 38 years, an event steeped in history and tragedy. He awoke fully alert, washed, dressed, and ready. Rituals were completed, final blessings received, and he walked with dignity toward the chamber. The execution room, sterile and precise, awaited. Witnesses took their seats. McVeigh faced death with the same disciplined resolve that had characterized his final days. He lay on the gurney, straps securing his limbs, for lines prepared. When asked for final words, he offered none, instead providing a written statement. A quote from Invictus by William Ernest Henley: "I am the master of my fate. I am the captain of my soul." It was a final act of defiance, a reflection of his unyielding mindset. At 7:09 a.m., the lethal injection began. Drugs flowed through the fore, rendering him unconscious, paralyzing muscles, and stopping the heart. Within seconds, McVeigh's breathing slowed, then ceased. At 7:14 a.m., the doctor confirmed death. The condemned had been pronounced dead. Reactions in the witness room were mixed: relief, shock, disbelief. Outside, crowds erupted with celebration or protest, some seeking justice, others questioning morality. McVeigh's body was cremated. No public ceremony or grave marked his passing. Despite the conclusion of his life, questions about domestic terrorism and prevention persisted. The 168 victims, including 19 children, were memorialized at the former Murrah building site, their legacy enduring, while McVeigh's name faded into infamy. After McVeigh's death, the prison descended into a quiet that contrasted sharply with the chaos outside. The media swarmed, broadcasting reactions, opinions, and debates over the morality of the execution. Some called it justice. Others saw it as a troubling affirmation of the state's power over life and death. For the guards and officials who had spent years preparing for this moment, the routine of procedure now gave way to reflection. They had witnessed a man who, despite his crimes, had maintained a composure that unsettled even the most experienced officers. McVeigh's calmness, discipline, and meticulous planning had made the execution almost clinical, almost impersonal, even as history unfolded around him. The story of Timothy McVeigh does not end with his death. The Oklahoma City bombing remained a haunting reminder of how ordinary events can be transformed into catastrophic tragedies. On April 19, 1995, ordinary people went about their mornings, oblivious to the horror that would descend upon them. Children played, workers sipped coffee, and parents prepared for a typical day. Within minutes, the rhythm of daily life shattered. The bomb tore through the federal building, a monstrous manifestation of one man's radicalized ideology. The aftermath was a city in mourning, a community in shock, and a nation grappling with the scale of domestic terrorism. The psychological profile of McVeigh became a subject of intense scrutiny. Analysts examined his childhood, his military service, his fascination with government conspiracies, and his admiration for historical figures who justified violence in the name of ideology. Bullied as a child, McVeigh developed a sense of alienation and resentment that would grow over the years. The Gulf War exposed him to structured military life and combat, where obedience, precision, and planning were paramount. These traits, when combined with his obsession with perceived government corruption and tyranny, created a volatile mindset capable of horrific acts. The Waco siege and Ruby Ridge incident reinforced his beliefs that the federal government was a tyrannical force, deepening his resolve to act violently. The meticulous nature of McVeigh's planning extended to the Oklahoma City bombing itself. He studied the building, the routines of its occupants, and the logistics of transporting and detonating explosives. He timed every action with military precision, understanding the consequences of error. The explosion was calculated to inflict maximum damage, and its effect was catastrophic. The north side of the building collapsed, concrete slabs crushing those inside. Surrounding structures were damaged, windows shattered across the city, and the blast was felt miles away. The immediate death toll included 168 people, among them 19 children, whose lives were claimed in the daycare center. Another 684 were injured, with some suffering permanent disabilities. The moral calculus McVeigh employed, labeling innocent children as collateral damage, revealed a chilling rationality that made him both fascinating and terrifying to psychologists and law enforcement alike. In the years following the bombing, McVeigh's interactions with the legal system highlighted his singular approach to justice, or, in his view, retribution. Unlike most death row inmates, he did not cling to life through endless appeals or legal maneuvers. He dismissed lawyers who attempted to intervene on his behalf, asserting control over his final fate. In doing so, He reframed his execution as a continuation of his ideological struggle, a final act against a government he despised. Every moment of his final hours reinforced this narrative. The careful selection of books, the precise execution of routines, the clarity with which he wrote letters and statements. Even in death, McVeigh maintained the disciplined mindset that had governed his actions throughout life. The role of spirituality, though seemingly contradictory given McVeigh's agnostic beliefs, added another layer to his final day. Father Charles Smith, the Catholic chaplain, provided guidance not as a vehicle for repentance but as a means to confront mortality. Their conversations, while private, offered McVeigh a structured way to reflect on the inevitability of death without compromising his ideological stance. When the priest asked if he wished to confess or seek forgiveness for his actions, McVeigh declined, underscoring his unwavering belief in the righteousness of his mission. Reciting the Lord's Prayer together was less an act of religious submission and more a ritual of contemplation, a symbolic gesture bridging the gap between human convention and personal conviction. The final night before his execution was marked by unusual tranquility. McVeigh ate his simple last meal, mint chocolate chip ice cream, with deliberate calm. He refused sedatives, choosing to face death fully alert. He wrote letters to friends and family, each word carefully composed, his handwriting steady, the tone controlled. He slept peacefully, uninterrupted by fear, anxiety, or nightmares. Guards described the scene as unnatural, almost surreal. A man about to die displaying serenity unimaginable for most facing similar circumstances. This calm, disciplined behavior became a defining feature of McVeigh's narrative, a counterpoint to the horror of his actions, emphasizing the duality of human nature, the capacity for meticulous order and devastating chaos in the same individual. Morning arrived, and with it, the final steps toward execution. The prison staff enacted strict protocols. Equipment was checked, procedures reviewed, and the execution chamber readied. McVeigh, fully awake, completed his final personal routines, washing, dressing, and receiving spiritual counsel. He walked with dignity toward the chamber, restrained yet unbowed. Witnesses observed silently, their emotions a mixture of anticipation, sorrow, and shock. McVeigh's face remained impassive, his demeanor calm. As he lay on the gurney, the straps secured, the 4 lines inserted, he offered no verbal farewell. Instead, he submitted a written statement from Invictus. "I am the master of my fate. I am the captain of my soul." The words encapsulated the ethos that had guided him through life and death alike. The lethal injection commenced at 7:09 a.m., 3 drugs flowing sequentially to induce unconsciousness, paralyze muscles, and stop the heart. Within seconds, McVeigh's breathing slowed and ceased. At 7:14 a.m., the official declaration of death was made. The execution marked a historic moment, the first federal execution in 38 years. Reactions varied. Some celebrated the perceived justice. Others questioned the morality of state-sanctioned killing. McVeigh's ashes were cremated, never publicly memorialized, and his name, though infamous, gradually faded as the nation sought closure and healing. Beyond the execution, the broader implications of McVeigh's actions persisted. Law enforcement agencies revisited domestic terrorism protocols. City planners and emergency responders analyzed structural vulnerabilities, and policymakers debated preventive measures. Memorials were erected, honoring the victims and their families, ensuring that the human cost of McVeigh's ideology remained at the forefront of public consciousness. The Oklahoma City National Memorial stands today as a symbol of resilience and remembrance, a counterbalance to the violence that defined that morning in 1995. McVeigh's story serves as both a cautionary tale and a study in human psychology. It forces reflection on the intersection of personal grievance, ideological conviction, and societal impact. How does an individual shaped by trauma, military experience, and obsession with conspiracies arrive at a decision to kill hundreds? How does society identify warning signs before tragedy occurs? McVeigh's meticulous planning, disciplined behavior, and unwavering conviction underscore the challenges in predicting and preventing acts of domestic terrorism. His calmness in the face of death, seemingly incongruous with his crimes, continues to intrigue psychologists, criminologists, and the public alike. Even as his name recedes from headlines, McVeigh's actions continue to influence discussions on security, justice, and morality. The bombing's victims, memorialized through plaques, gardens, and ceremonies, represent the enduring human cost of radicalization and violence. Survivors' stories, echoing the trauma and resilience of the Oklahoma City community, remind the world that the consequences of such acts extend far beyond the immediate moment of tragedy. The lessons remain vital. Vigilance, empathy, and understanding can prevent the rise of individuals who feel justified in wielding violence against innocents. McVeigh's final act, executed with precision and calm, reflects a man who had reconciled himself with death but never with the humanity he destroyed. His meticulous planning, rationalization of actions, and refusal to seek forgiveness illustrate a deeply complex individual, both methodical and monstrous. By studying his life and final hours, society gains insight into the mechanisms of extremism, the psychology of killers, and the need for proactive intervention. The Oklahoma City bombing, McVeigh's execution, and the memorialization of the victims together form a narrative that is as much about humanity's resilience as it is about its capacity for devastation. The story of Timothy McVeigh remains a lens through which the world examines domestic terrorism, the death penalty, and human psychology. It asks difficult questions. How does society respond to ideologically driven violence? How does one reconcile justice with morality? How do ordinary communities recover from extraordinary tragedy? McVeigh's life, his crimes, and his composed final hours continue to serve as a study in contradiction. The coexistence of meticulous discipline and horrific violence, the juxtaposition of calm preparation and sudden catastrophe. His death did not erase the scars of April 19, 1995, nor did it absolve the enormity of his actions. Yet it concluded the life of one of the most infamous domestic terrorists in American history. The Oklahoma City bombing and McVeigh's execution leave behind enduring legacies. The memory of victims, the lessons of prevention, and the stark reminder of how ideology, trauma, and obsession can culminate in catastrophe. McVeigh's final moments, recorded and observed, continue to captivate, disturb, and educate. They reveal the discipline and conviction of a man who embraced death willingly, yet cannot undo the devastation wrought in life. While the memorials and the rebuilding of Oklahoma City signify resilience and hope, McVeigh's story remains a somber testament to the consequences of radicalization and the human capacity for destruction. His actions, frozen in history, challenge us to confront difficult truths about society, morality, and the limits of justice. What are your thoughts on Timothy McVeigh's last day alive? Share your opinions in the comments below. And make sure to like this video and subscribe for more true crime stories that shocked America.